thanks to Arpan, we have been able to fix that technical problem. So what I was trying to say before we had to stop the session was that you run these column runs and you look for when it breaks through, phosphorus in this case. And for the 3 columns that we ran, this is just the regular resin into which we impregnate hydrated ferric oxide. You see it breaks through, you can say at about here, 140 bed volume. Then you regenerate the other one, the resin into which you just preload with copper. And you see it breaks through maybe 700 bed volumes. And you regenerate. And we will go through how to get these separation factor values in just a moment. And then if you look at the last column, which is what we are calling the Dow, into which you preload with copper and then you precipitate nanoparticles of hydrated ferric oxide. And there you get better performance in that the breakthrough is, let's say, 1800 bed. And you regenerate. So the question then is, one has to look at also kinetics. Until now it was all equilibrium. And when you do kinetic tests, you know that in ion exchangers, there are 2 possible rate limiting steps. It could be intraparticle diffusion or it could be the film diffusion. And you do some tests called interruption tests. If you, for example, run a column and you stop it, so you stop the flow, what you will see is sometimes the concentration drops. And then again, when you resume the column, the concentration picks up and this flow starts to continue. So in an interruption test, if you see something like this, that means that intraparticle diffusion is the rate limiting step because the flux curve, you can see how the flux curves are. So I will not get into the details. It's very standard. Any ion exchange principles book will give you the details. The question then is, well, if intraparticle diffusivity is the rate limiting step, then what is its value? And one can do very simple tests to find that value. But you can also run some other models, and this way is that you take your data and then you try to fit to whichever is the best model, whichever fits best. So one can do these kinds of experiments, very standard experiments, and these models, they have their assumptions. If those assumptions are valid, then so what we saw is that in some cases, most of the cases, you can say, this pseudo first order diffusion model seems to work in the sense that for tau HFOCU, we are getting the theoretical uptake. So this is in terms of milligrams of phosphorus per gram of resin. So we are getting about 15 to 18, which is what you see as well. And you also need to know the K value, as we call it. And in this case, it comes out to something like 0.015 per minute. If this is nothing much, it's again, you run the model, you fit the data. Now, when we talk of
Sir?
Yes.
What is the significance of first order kinetics and second order model? Suppose I get second order model, what is the significance? Means its performance or how
Well, one can't really answer the significance in that sense. It's the question of what is the mechanism that's going on. Based on that mechanism, sometimes you can deduce that this will be a first order or this will be a second order. Most of the time in our field, we don't really know the mechanism because it's not just one mechanism, it's a series of absorption, you can start with what is the adsorbent, how this adsorbate gets into the adsorbent based on whether it is a macropore or a micropore. There you can have a little better intuition as to what could be the kinetic rate limiting step.
It's a layer of absorbance.
Layer, of course. Well, again, when you look at when you are fitting an isotherm, if you say that this is a Langmuir isotherm, that means you are presupposing that it is a monolayer. So I'm not talking of the layer, I'm talking of this. Let's say it's a gas diffusion. If it's a gas diffusion, then it relates very well to stoichiometry. In liquid phase to solid phase, it's a little more complicated. So one can't really answer what is the significance except to say that if this is what you get, that means that's how you will have to then use those parameters in your column when you design them. That's all. And the other significance is that, which we will not get into, is that there is sometimes bleeding. So you see here, this is zirconium. You get pretty much non-detect phosphorus, and then this is a little bit of an aberration. The data is kind of jumping up and down, but sometimes you get something like this, slow bleed. That means there is a kinetic limitation in the sense that your column, it's not able to get to its equilibrium capacity. I mean, you say your breakthrough is, let's say, 10% of the influent. Whatever is your influent, if you reach 10% of that in the effluent, you have to stop the column. So then, if it's a slow bleed like that, then you're not using your column, whatever the volume. And that's what it's. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, if you have a situation like this is the best situation because you get non-detect and then it breaks through and it reaches the influent concentration. This you never really see in real. What you see sometimes is, we call it the S curve. So that means, let's say this is, I'm just making up number, 5 milligrams per liter. And your breakthrough curve is 0.5 milligrams. So here, the number of bed volumes to breakthrough is very high. Here, if this is 0.5, that means all this column is unusable. Now, whether that is because of a first order or second order, that's not what I am getting at. Whether it is first order or second order, you can have this kind of a slow bleed. But we need to watch out for this because if this is the case, then there's a possibility that may have to increase your EBCT or things like that. So now we talked of iron oxyhydroxide. You can very well look at some other granular metal oxide. And in this case, we tried zirconium. Zirconium has some additional properties which we will not get into. In other words, zirconium most likely is a better granular metal oxide than iron, much more stable. So we tried that and we got a little better, but not as good as we would have liked it to. So why, I don't know. Yeah. But the steps are pretty much the same. Zirconium loading is a little more tricky. We will not get into that. Okay, so the question is, if you have a lot of DOM, then dissolved organic matter, then the recycle of the effluent becomes a little challenging. So I will just show you. You see, I mean, this is the effluent that was reused 10 times. And you can see very clearly that as you keep increasing the number of cycles, becomes much darker, which means that you are concentrating the organic, increasing organic matter and increasing TDS. So, practically speaking, you will reach a stage where after, in this case, I would say about 8 or 9 steps, stage 8 or 9, after which you will have to think of how to dispose this, because it's not possible to recycle it. This, so you can recover, can get in the first stage more than 80% recovery. DOM, it has effect in terms of reuse of the effluent, but not in terms of phosphorus recovery. And iron and zirconium both can achieve good removal. Okay. So we are now looking into this, what we call CECs, contaminants of emerging concern, because as we talked about pharmaceuticals, the hormones, the antibiotics, and all that, how they influence the system. That is ongoing. I don't have results right now to discuss. Okay, so that completes this one. That completes this one. Questions? Questions? All right. So now we will look at how do we calculate this separation factor, because that is an important. Okay, so I think it's in that laptop. This is a PDF file to start with, so I think this should not be a problem. Okay, so when we look at an ion exchange system, then of course there is an exchange of ions. And what is going on is that you have some ion, which is called the counter ion, which is in the resin, and you have some ion in the solution, and they are being exchanged. So if you're looking at a cation exchanger, you may have a situation where the polymer is preloaded with hydrogen, H plus, and the solution you are passing has some sodium. So what happens is, because of law of mass action, sodium is very high in solution, it is zero in the exchanger at the beginning, and vice versa. So sodium goes in, kicks out the H plus, and the H plus comes out. That is what ion exchange is all about. Now, because this is a reaction, it will have some equilibrium. So when it reaches that equilibrium, we say, well, what is its equilibrium constant? Well, it is nothing but the products raised to their stoichiometric powers. Here everything is 1, so I have not written, divided by the reactants raised to their stoichiometric powers. So now you see here these are curved parentheses, which means these are activities. That is the definition. That is, when you look at the equilibrium constant, it is the activity, it's not just the concentration. So how do you find the activity? Well, it's kind of not very straightforward. So what we do is we say, well, let us suppose that we have a pseudo constant or a more usable value, where what we are doing is we are substituting the concentration now for activity. So in the earlier case, if we look at these two, the only difference is that these are activities, these are concentrations, right? So concentration of H plus in the in the solution, that is very straightforward. Just put a pH meter, you will find it. Concentration of sodium, you just use an ion exchange chromatograph or atomic absorption spectrometer, you can very easily find it. How do you find the concentration of sodium in the resin? Well, you say that it is some fraction, we call it UNA. That means what fraction of the sides are loaded with sodium, that we are calling UNA, what fraction with hydrogen. And this is in terms of equivalence per liter, because whenever we do ion exchange, our units are always equivalence per liter, not moles per liter, because the exchange is happening on an equivalent basis. So, the resin phase sodium concentration, how many equivalents of sodium per liter of resin, how many equivalents of hydrogen per liter of resin, and this is of course the aqueous phase concentration also in equivalents per liter. So now we can bring in this this parameter called the separation factor, where we are looking at the distribution of the ion I between the solid phase and the resin and the solution. Solid phase is the Y resin and X means solution. Similarly, how is the J, the other component, distributed between solid and liquid phase? And when you do that, you can then come up with, in this case, alpha, which is the separation factor for sodium compared to hydrogen, is nothing but by Na divided by X Na, and this whole thing divided by Y. That means how is sodium distributed between solid and liquid divided by how is hydrogen distributed. And you do a little bit of manipulation, because rather than finding this resin phase concentration in equivalents per liter, if you divide it by the capacity of the resin, you now get a fraction. So we call YNA as the equivalent fraction of Na in the resin, YH is the equivalent fraction of H in resin, and keep in mind this YNA plus YH has to equal to 1, because that's how the system is operating. And so in this case, this is what we call homovalent ion exchange. That means the both the ions have the same valence, and in this case they both are the same. That means alpha NaH is the same as KNaH. But if you do heterovalent ion exchange, like we have in this case, we have the resin which is loaded with sodium. Whenever we see an oval bar, it means it's the resin phase. So the resin is loaded with sodium, and you have calcium coming in. So calcium will go in, kick out the sodium. Now we have to maintain equivalence. So because this is only one, sodium has one, has plus one charge, calcium has two. So this is how we need to balance that. The two sides of the resin will be substituted by one calcium. So that's how it becomes R minus 2. And now if I write the equilibrium constant, the pseudo one, this is nothing but the calcium QCA times the square of sodium divided by UNA square, because I have the stoichiometric coefficient. Wherever I have the stoichiometric coefficient, I need to put that power and CCA. And now, if I use the same idea for separation factor, the separation factor is the distribution of calcium between solid and liquid divided by the distribution of sodium between solid and liquid. So this remains unchanged, I mean, whether it is homovalent or heterovalent. So what we see is that if I write this, then this is not equal to the equilibrium constant, but the equilibrium constant multiplied by this. And when you go through it, what you then do is, okay, let me go back one step. So what this means is that the separation factor, if I look at this, you see now I have little better control over the system, because what can I do? I can change the total concentration of the liquid phase. That is something which I have kind of freedom over. And I can change the Q. So the separation factor can be manipulated to the total ionic concentration of the solution. And the capacity of the resin is a constant, but this ratio, Q over Ct, I can keep changing. So we will do an example in a moment, and then it will get clearer. Let's read this, I think, before we get to this. So let's look at this equation one more time. This is a constant because this is coming from thermodynamics. Q is a constant because it's the exchange capacity. C sub T, X and A, Y and A, these are not constant. They will change with the system. So the higher the C sub T, the lower is this. Because you see, if you look at this expression, then the higher the C sub T, that means this has to be low. The lower the alpha CA. That means selectivity tends to reverse in favor of the monovalent. So the beauty of this is that when you are doing this exchange, you are substituting a monovalent sodium with divalent calcium. Then, because calcium is divalent, it will it will form stronger bond. So, in this way, as it is written, you favor. But if you increase the aqueous phase concentration, which we do when we regenerate, then the system kind of becomes the opposite. So then it will favor in the reverse direction. Because you see, if I flood this system with very high sodium chloride, what am I doing? I'm increasing this by a whole lot. And you know that the Le Chatelier's principle, if I increase this by a whole lot, it will try to come back to its equilibrium. How will it do so? It will go in the reverse direction. So that is how we manipulate these systems. And then we draw these curves. Typically, we get the separation factor, the X. In this case, this is calcium sodium exchange, and we plot the fraction of calcium in solution, XCA, and the fraction of calcium in the resin, YCA, and we join them by a curve. If, as I was saying in the morning, if that curve happens to be above this 45-degree line, that means calcium is preferred over sodium. If it is on this concave side, that means the opposite. And so what we do is, when we run the system, if we are trying to remove calcium, let's say we do so in water softening. In many groundwaters, we have this situation where calcium is very high, and you don't want your water to have very high calcium, because then it does not lather very well. It forms precipitates if you heat that water for your coffee or for your ironing or whatever. So you need to remove the calcium. If you want to remove the calcium, what do? You just bring it in contact with the resin, and when you put that resin in the column, the resin is loaded in sodium, and your water is hard. Your water has a lot of calcium, magnesium. That calcium and magnesium, they pick out the sodium from the resin, and your calcium is then bound to the resin. Sodium comes out, but sodium is not hard. I mean, hardness is caused by resin is exhausted, when it is full of calcium, what you do, you then bring a very high solution of sodium chloride. And by that, what are you doing? You are asking the reaction to go in the reverse direction. So, when you go in the reverse direction, you are basically trying to create a situation like this where now sodium becomes more preferable. So, in the normal exhaustion run, calcium is preferred. When you are regenerating, sodium is preferred. That's what we do. Okay? And we will do this example very soon. Okay. So, let's do this example. So, take out your calculators. We will need that. Separation. So in the interest of time, we will do a couple of calculations and then I'll give you the rest because we'll not do all of the calculations because that will take some time, all right? So what are we doing? We take an anion exchanger, a standard anion exchanger, and we preloaded it with nitrate. So initial exchanger is R plus nitrate. So we take this resin when we get it from the manufacturer, no matter what form it is, we rinse this resin and then we pass a very high concentration, or we in a batch system we equilibrate it with a very high nitrate concentration. So now all the anions are nitrate. Now this resin we equilibrate with the 5 milliequivalent per liter sulfate solution. And we take different amounts and I'll give you those amounts. So I took 100 ml of solution to which I added these different amounts. 0.03 grams of resin. In another bottle, I added 0.1. In the third, 0.2. In the fourth, 0.4, and so forth. So I took 5 bottles. I have 100 ml of solution. What is that solution? It is a sulfate solution. How much sulfate? 5 milliequivalents per liter. 5 milliequivalents per liter. Okay. So now what will happen is that the resin will come into some equilibrium. The resin is all nitrate, the water is all sulfate. So some amount of the sulfate will get into the resin, some amount of nitrate will come out of the resin. How much? That will depend on the mass because we have to do a mass balance, right? So at the end of it, we then look at the solution. So solution initially solution 5 milliequivalent per liter sulfate. And some of the sulfate will go into the resin, so the sulfate concentration will, and initial is 0 milliequivalent per liter nitrate. Right? There is no nitrate in the solution. And now, once you equilibrate the resin, for typically we do it over 24 hours. So, and say after 12 hours or so, you will get equilibrium, but we run it a little longer just to be on the safe side. So after that, what happens is that the sulfate concentration reduces, the nitrate concentration increases. And these are the values. So the more resin you put in, the more sulfate will go in. So the sulfate concentration would reduce, more nitrate will come out, the nitrate concentration will increase. That's very logical. And then what we do is we look at what is the fraction of sulfate in solution. So let's just do one row. So grams of resin per 100 ml solution, 0.03. Sulfate concentration at equilibrium, 4.2. And I'm not writing the units. You can see them on the board, on the screen. Nitrate is 0.9. Okay. So what is X sulfate? This is 4.2 divided by 4.2 plus 0.9. This comes out to, it should come out to 0.8. Right?
4.0.
Say that again.
4.0 divided by 5.0.
Okay. So XSO4 is fine. Questions? Then you see how much nitrate was on the resin. The resin has a capacity of 5 milliequivalents per liter. Is given in the earlier page. I have to read it. The exchange that was equilibrated to the 5 milliequivalents of which the results are provided. Draw the sulfate and anion concentration of 5 milliequivalents per liter. Okay. So the nitrate concentration is 0.9 milliequivalents per liter, and at equilibrium, nitrate on resin is 0. There is not, because all the nitrate has come out. So
3 milliequivalent per gram nitrate capacity.
3 milliequivalent per gram nitrate capacity. So 3 times 0.03 is 0.09. That is initial, and at equilibrium you don't see anything because everything has come out. So this one is not a good, because you can't really divide by 0. Let's take this one, 0.10. Your sulfate concentration initially was 5, now it has reduced to 2.15. Your nitrate concentration in the water was 0, now it has increased to 2.6. So you can do 2.15 divided by 2.15 plus 2.6, it should give you 0.45. That is the XSO4. Nitrate initially on resin, 3 milliequivalent per gram times 0.1 grams, which is 0.3. How much nitrate now? Well, we can see, because nitrate concentration is 2.6 milliequivalents per liter multiplied by 100 ml. That will give you how much nitrate you have in solution, and you know how much nitrate you started with, 0.3. So 0.3 minus 0.26, 0.04. And sulfate on resin at equilibrium, well, again, you can look at the sulfate mass, how much you started with, how much of it is left in solution, the remaining has to be in the resin. And so you get these two values, Y and alpha. So any questions on how I got these values in second row? So as you see, these values of alpha, the separation factor, is not a constant, it's changing. So you have to then draw this kind of a curve, that XSO4 versus Y. And then you join them by a smooth curve. And if you draw this 45-degree line, then you will see whether sulfate is preferred or not. This is how we draw the separation factor. We get the separation factor values. Questions? Say it again. Okay, let me rotate this. Yes. YSO4, how did I get it? That means what is the fraction of the resin in sulfate form? Right? So, how much? Let's do these calculations. So, we are looking at second row. Second row. XSO4, you are fine, right? How I got XSO4? Okay. So now, if I look at the resin, then mass of sulfate in solution. How much sulfate is in solution? Well, it is 2.15 milliequivalents per liter times 100 ml, right? 0.215? 0.215 milliequivalents. Agree? How much of sulfate did you have? Mass of sulfate initially. Initially, the resin had no sulfate. All the sulfate was in solution. How much did we have? 5 milliequivalents per liter times 0.1 ml, which is 0.5, right? 0.5. Agree? So, mass of sulfate in resin is how much? .5 minus 0.215, which is how much? Is it 0.285? Yeah. 0.285. Okay. Now, if I look at nitrate, again we do the same kind of logic for nitrate. Mass of nitrate in solution. How much nitrate do we have in solution? Well, it is 2.6 milliequivalents per liter, and the solution is 100 ml. So 0.26 milliequivalents, right? 0.26 milliequivalents. Okay. And initial, how much mass of nitrate in the system? Initially, we had nitrate only in the resin, 3 milliequivalents per gram times 0.03, which is 0.9. So, mass of nitrate in resin is 0.9 minus 0.26, which is 0.64. Is it? So, if I try to find YSO4, YSO4 is 0.285 divided by 0.285 plus 0.64. How much is it? Hmm?
Zero point three zero eight.
0.30. Mass of sulfate is
Sir, it is defined by capacity.
Say it again.
0.283.
Huh?
285 divided by capacity.
Yeah. Divided by capacity. Yes.
By 3, it will be divided by 3 now.
Yes.
Because we have a fraction of.
But then everything is divided by 3.
Huh.
So then, no, let me see. Um, wow. Mass of nitrate in solution is 0.6 times 0.1, 0.6. How much was it? It was 3 times 0.1. So, sorry. It is not 0.9. It is 3 milliequivalents per gram times 0.1 gram, right? 0.3. My mistake, I apologize. So 0.3 initially, and now we have 0.26 in solution, so it is 0.04, which means it is 0.285 divided by 0.285 plus not 0.64 but 0.0. How much is this? That is YSO4, and if YSO4 is 0.88, how much is YNA?
1 minus 0.8.
1 minus. Very good. So YNA is 1 minus 0.88, which is 0.12. And similarly, we have the values of X SO4, which is 0.45. So X NA is 1 minus 0.45. So now you can compute the value of alpha. Let's do that. YSO4 is 0.88, YNA is 0.12, XSO4 is, we found that 0.45, and XNA, no, not N,
Not in nitrates.
nitrogen, NO3, yes, yes. Would be 1 minus 0.45, which is 0.55. And alpha SO4 NO3 equals YSO4 divided by XSO4 divided by YNO3 divided by X. And that is 0.88 divided by 0.45. Whole thing divided by 0.12 divided by 0.5. Okay?
8.96.
8.96. Here it is given 8.6. Maybe we.
But actually, what happens this is in real situations. We calculate this in back process. We know that summation of that is X, Y SO4 and NO3 equal to 1. But in this case, you measure the concentration of sulfate and nitrogen aqueous state.
Okay.
According to this result, you determine the value of Y and X.
Okay.
But in this case, we just theoretically calculate 1 minus this one.
Hey, anyway, I mean, it's pretty close by. So, either is okay. But this is the process of it. As you see, as we just heard, that if your initial sulfate concentration is 5 milliequivalents per liter, at equilibrium, these two together should be 5, right? But when you do an experiment, you see that it's always some experimental errors that we made. Okay. Questions? So you do these kinds of calculations for the other rows, which we will not do because we want to go ahead. And then you get these kind of curve. XSO4 versus YSO4. But the point that I would like to highlight is that this separation factor is not a constant, as you can see. It varies with your XSO4 or with the aqueous phase concentration. So that's why we need to do an average. When we draw this curve, if you were asked what is the separation factor, you could do an average of this, and this. But this is during the exhaustion part. When we regenerate, it will be the reverse. Okay. Now we can have a system which we normally do, where we don't have just two components. It's very natural to have a multi-component system. And if you have a multi-component system, then you have to do a multi-component analysis. And it's basically that the y of one component I is nothing but 1 over 1 plus the summation of all the others, alpha ji xj over xi, as long as j is not equal to I, all the other components. So I will upload this document. You go through these steps. Because one thing is for sure, that the x component of I is the concentration of I divided by the total concentration. X component of J is the concentration of J divided by total, so forth. So all these together added up will equal to 1. Similarly, Yi, Yj, Yk, all of them added up will be equal to 1. And then the individual aqueous phase concentrations, Ci, Cj, Ck, when you add them up, they become equal to the total concentration. X's all added up become equal to 1. Y's all added up become equal to 1. And then, if you use this principle, the other principle which is very important is that separation factor for I over J is the same as 1 over separation factor of J over I. And you can see the logic behind it. If I say sulfate is preferred 5 times over chloride, it is the same as saying chloride is preferred 0.2 times over sulfate. All right. So we get these two important relationships. I equals this, Yj equals this, and you can very easily see Yj as well. All right. So what we will do now is we will do a phosphorus recovery design, system design. Questions? Questions? Okay. So we are looking at tertiary treatment where your influent phosphorus is 5 milligrams per liter, and you run a Dow upper column, which is this one. Arpan, where is that file that we were just looking at? That's not. It's the same name. Okay, so we have a wastewater which has 5 milligrams per liter of phosphorus. We pass it through a column, which is this one, the Dow upper column, and we know that in a Dow upper column, the breakthrough occurs at, let's say, 700 bed volume. So now we have to design this system. So phosphorus is 5, chloride is 6.5, very little chloride. Sorry, not 6.5, 65, 60. Sulfate is 30. Nitrate is 10. And the pH is 8. And these are what you get. This is the real situation. This is our town, as I said, Dartmouth wastewater treatment plant, the day when we sampled. Okay. So I want to remove the phosphorus. So flow rate that I am treating is 1 million liters per day. I have to treat 1 million liters per day, and I, based on again literature review and some experimental results, I have to keep an empty bed contact time of 4 minutes. That means it should take at least 4 minutes for the water to pass through the column. I will divide this flow stream into 4 parallel. So this is 1 million liters per day, but each column is getting only 1/4. I have 4 columns in parallel. I split the flow. So each column is getting 1/4 of the total flow. And I have to convert the liters per day into liters per minute because I have an EBCD. So this translates to 173.6 liters per minute. A day is 24 hours and an hour is 60 minutes. So if I divide this by 24 and then further divide by 60, this is what I get. Okay. So for one column, bed volume needed is 173.6 liters per minute times 4 minutes, and this comes out to 694. So I need a column this is my lab column. This has a bed volume of 10 milliliters. In my real life, this diameter square pi by 4 times the diameter square multiplied by the length should be 694 liters. Okay. Now there are some guidelines in terms of L over D. So this is L and this is D. So there are some guidelines which say that L over D should at least be greater than 4 or 5. So we will take an L over D of 10. And this comes from the fact that when you pass this solution, there is always a danger of short circuiting. That means there could be some channels, very fine channels in your column, where it does not meet the exchanger and goes straight. And if it goes straight through, then of course it will not be able to. It will not be able to remove the phosphorus. So that's why we need these slender. These are, as you can see, pretty slender column. The L is at least 10 times the D. And so now we can find this. We can find the diameter, comes out to half a meter. Okay? Why don't you check it? Fine. So we have 4 columns, each one being half meter diameter or little less than half meter and 4.5 meters. 4.5 meters, as you can imagine, is a pretty tall column. This is what will be maybe 2.5 meters, 3 meters. So 1.5 times this. Okay. All right. 0.45 is the diameter, and 10 times the diameter is the height. Questions?
So what is the maximum range of L by D?
Maximum range of L by D. It's a difficult question to answer. I would say 10 would be the maximum. I have never seen anything more than 10. And that is because then these systems become so high that it's then difficult to put them into practice.
For structure point of view, this should be 12, sir.
Well,
Because sir, long in become long column. So reading sensitivity units.
that I don't know. So 10 is, I would say, the highest, I think. Okay. Now, questions. So we saw that we can run this column for 700 bed volumes. That means as long as you are below 10 times the influent concentration, you are okay. So I will run at least until here. Now, in practice, what we do is when it reaches this breakthrough, we then put it onto another column. And so that even after this breakthrough, when the phosphorus concentration is increasing, since it is going to the other column, at the end of the second column, you will get again non-detect. So that's how we use most of the column volume or mass. But for today, what we will, I think we can erase all this. bed volumes to break through is 700. So, which is one bed volume as we just saw is 694. So, volume of water treated is 694 liters times 700, and that comes out to 485.8 meters. So that's how much water you are treating. And how long would this go on? Time of run is 485.8 meter cube divided by 173.6 liters per minute. And of course, we have to do the conversion liters to meter cube and all that. And it comes out to approximately 2 weeks. So you run this column for 2 days, and after 2 days, you will have to stop the column and regenerate. That's the idea. Okay. Questions?
The red color line is for chloride.
Say it again.
Red line is for chloride.
This is chloride,
This
this is sulfate, and this is phosphorus.
exhausted and then again change.
Sulfate?
Yes, chloride. After that,
See, when you start the column, everything that is coming out is chloride. When sulfate breaks through, chloride suffers a dip. And when phosphorus breaks through, chloride suffers another dip. But this is so low in concentration that you don't really notice it. But chromatographic elution, that's what it says. I mean, what happens is when you typically, in this case, there are 3, phosphate, chloride, and sulfate. So what happens is you get chloride coming, and then chloride happens to have a dip, which means there is sulfate coming out. And then chloride will suffer another dip, which means that now you have phosphorus coming out. That is how the system works.
it's a total summation will be one. It's summation of 3 components.
Yes. When you look at the equivalent concentration, this plus this will always be equal to this. So then when the column is exhausted, then you have to regenerate it. So you will then pass a regenerant. Will pass the regenerant, and we will use a 2% sodium chloride regenerant, 15 bed volumes. After 2 days, of run, stop flow. Flow means flow of this phosphorus wastewater past 15 bed volumes of 2% sodium chloride, which means it is 1 bed volume is 694 liters. So 694 liters times 15 is approximately 110,500, little less than that. Questions? So this is 2% sodium chloride. So mass of sodium chloride needed is 10,500 liters times 2% means 20,000 milligrams per liter, which comes out to 210 kilograms. So you have to take 10,500 liters of, let's say, good quality water, not distilled water, it can be tap water. You add 210 kilograms of sodium chloride into it, it will dissolve instantaneously. That is the solution that you pass. And that will then strip out how much of the phosphorus? Let's suppose 90%. Suppose the recovery is 90%. So mass of phosphorus recovered is 0.995 milligrams per liter times 0.25 times 10 to the power 6 liters per day times 2 days. It comes out to 0.25.
Sir, in red column, what you are saying, then we have like 8 counters used up pressing and then fill it in some column which have red column.
Say that again.
That's how this 15 red column will be ensured because we have 700 red column.
That is 700 bed volumes of this wastewater that we passed. Then we stop the flow and now we pump 15 bed volumes of this.
Red column is this in your 5 by 4 square inch.
5 by 4 d square times done.
So, use the column of
No. You see, first you are passing this phosphorus contaminated water. You pass this for 2 days. Then you stop this flow and you now pass a solution which is 2% sodium chloride. Same system. Basically, what you do is after you have stopped the flow, you pass a few 5 to 10 bed volumes of just tap water. Then you pass the regenerant, and then after the regenerant, you again pass a few bed volumes of tap water. But these are all in the same mode. Same mode means this is all downslope. In this system, the water is always pumped going down the column. You can also have upflow. Little bit of an issue with upflow columns. Maybe you have to worry about, but nothing very serious. After regeneration.
You recover phosphorus.
Yes.
Then this solution content again initial solution.
Yes.
So this initial solution you can again study the.
Yes. We have to precipitate out the screw by. Okay. So we would like phosphorus in the form of true white. So we would like to recover phosphorus as true white. True white is ammonium, magnesium, phosphate. So, and suppose in our case we have no ammonium in the system, no magnesium in the water. So we have to bring from outside. So phosphorus fertilizer generated is true white, which is, as you can see, magnesium, ammonium, phosphate. And the 6H2O is the water of hydration. So, because in our solution, what do we have? We have phosphorus, we have sodium, we have chloride. So, we need to add these two salts. So, add magnesium as magnesium chloride. And magnesium chloride comes with 6 water of hydration. And add ammonia chloride. Now, tomorrow we will look at ammonium recovery, and then you will see that we can use the ammonium which is typically present in the wastewater to if not the whole, at least a substantial part of the nitrogen. But today we have no nitrogen in the wastewater. So I mean it is present as nitrate, which is unusable. So we will have to determine how much of these to add. And you see, this is all mole basis. 1 mole of phosphorus means 1 mole of ammonium, which means 1 mole of magnesium. So you can do those calculations. Because we are running short of time, I'll give you the final answers. And then when you go home today after your visit to the tea garden, you will be refreshed. You can then do these calculations. So, how much magnesium chloride? Magnesium chloride, this formula weight is 203.3 grams per mole. Magnesium is 24.3, chlorine is 35.45, so 35.45 times 2 plus 24.3 plus 6 times 18, you will see it is 203.3. And you need it on a molar basis, so you can find how many moles of phosphorus in 2.25 kilograms. It is 72.6 moles. When you do the calculation, you get 14.6 kilograms. And how much of ammonium chloride? Again, molar ratio 3.9 kilograms. So you have this regenerant, which is very high in phosphorus and sodium chloride. To that, you can add powder of so much and so much, a little more than stoichiometric, and it will start to precipitate. It's a very fast precipitation, as you know, is a pretty fast reaction once you achieve nucleation. So if you have nucleation, which we do in this case, it's a very fast reaction. It starts to, you can see it, the solution becomes very cloudy and it settles very fine, very fast, because as we saw, the crystals are very flaky. Anyway, so once this precipitate is formed, you have to then do a solid liquid separation. And as was asked, well, we take this solution, because now the phosphorus has been stripped out of it, we have to add a little bit of sodium chloride, not 2%, maybe 10% of that. And then again, we get to use that for the next cycle of regeneration. We pass a few next run of phosphorus recovery. But these are all for one column. Remember, we had 4 columns in parallel. So our numbers will be multiplied by 4. All the magnesium chloride, the ammonium chloride, so forth and so on. Okay. And the phosphorus recovered will also be multiplied by 4. So this is what I call Mickey Mouse design. It's not design, but it gives you the flavor. When we do the real design, there are so many other things we need to be aware of. But our focus in this course is not really to design the column, it is to see what are the governing principles that go behind the design. Okay? Questions? All right, so this is exactly 4 o'clock. Though we started a little late, we were able to, and unlike yesterday, we are able to finish on time. So I will send, as yesterday, I will send these files to Arpan and he will then circulate them to you. Tomorrow, we will start with ammonium. And before we get into ammonium recovery, I would like to give you a little bit idea of how we typically deal with nitrogen. As you know, the most common way we deal with nitrogen is biological nitrification followed by denitrification. And that is very well established. The only problem is you cannot recover nitrogen. I mean, the nitrogen is lost as nitrogen gas. Because what are you doing? You are doing organic nitrogen to ammonia to nitrate to nitrogen gas. This is nitrification, this is denitrification. But you are ending as nitrogen gas, and nitrogen gas is not really usable. So, but it is the most common way in which we deal with nitrogen in wastewater. Very few plants in the US and globally speaking, very few plants recover nitrogen. But we want to be at the cutting edge. That is what this course is all about. So I will give you a little bit of an idea of how we achieve this. And then we will get into how do we recover. And when we talk of recovery, we will be looking at 2 processes. One is an ion exchange process and the other one is air stripping. How many of you have covered air stripping in your curriculum? Air stripping? Air stripping, no? First time you are hearing? It was taught at MTech. Sorry. I have crossed my one. Okay, so what I will do is, I will give you the basics of air stripping, but we will not be able to do a design because in order to do a design of an air stripper, there are some things like mass transfer coefficients that we need to learn. So I will kind of give you a distilled version of air stripping. Before tomorrow, if you can look up Henry's constant, because Henry's constant is very critical when we have to strip off a volatile organic, or in this case ammonium, then the Henry's constant becomes very critical. So please try to look into the definition of Henry's constant. And in terms of mass transfer coefficients, I will give you some correlations. We will use a couple of correlations, but we will not get into the details as to how we get them. So we will look at mass transfer, air stripping, and then that will not be for a very long time. And then we'll spend the most of the time on nitrogen recovery or ammonium recovery using an ion exchanger. In this case, it's an inorganic exchanger, a zeolite. It has a very long name, clinoptilolite. And we will go through why clinoptilolite, what is clinoptilolite, and how to recover. Okay. So that will be for tomorrow. Questions? Okay, time for tea got